Well, I said I would talk about New Japan when they're having some big weeks, and I would say there was a pretty big angle over this past week in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, my history with New Japan is that it's not necessarily my favorite style. There's a lot of different styles in pro wrestling, and strong style, if you will, isn't necessarily my favorite of the bunch. The other problem that held me back from only watching New Japan off and on over the years is that I don't speak Japanese. I like when I can watch a build to a feud or a storyline and understand the promos. Now, luckily these days we do have English commentary in New Japan, and we get to have some of the promos explained to us, which is nice to have. But, back in the day, I did not have that, and so it took me a long time to actually try and start watching All Japan and New Japan, because to me it's just a bunch of matches that I don't really know the stakes or any of that. But what I'm mostly going to talk about here today is the pay-per-view, where it was basically New Japan versus Pro Wrestling NOAH. Now, I do not follow NOAH much at all. I have started to try, now that I have this wrestling channel, so that I can maybe talk about NOAH at times. But I don't really know the history of NOAH, and I don't really know that much about the history of New Japan and NOAH. I do know that over the past year, they have built it up as they had a hard time working together again to build to this event. And then we see it play out during this event where there is some anger and animosity between New Japan wrestlers and Pro Wrestling NOAH wrestlers. And I really enjoyed that. The main thing was the angle, I'm calling it an angle, between, and before I get into this, let me just say, I know I'm probably going to butcher Japanese names. Listen, I butcher English names in my real life on a daily basis, so to expect me to be able to pronounce Japanese names, I'm sorry, I just can't do it. But I believe his name is Kiyomiya. He and Okada kind of got into it after their tag match against each other. Kiyomiya is basically the world champion of Pro Wrestling NOAH. Meanwhile, Okada is the IWGP heavyweight champion. And so how they went about this is that Kiyomiya really kicked Okada right in the face. It looked painful. He had a welt and some bleeding coming from it. Now, I don't know how I feel about, in pro wrestling, you being that stiff to the head. We know all these head injuries are not good for a real human being. But this is a way to, I guess, make this angle seem very, very real. And I guess a real kick to the face will do that. Before we get into the main angle here and how hot it was a very hot angle. It was my favorite angle in pro wrestling so far in 2023. And like I said, I'm not even a huge New Japan fan, but this was honestly kind of a master class in storytelling that I just am lacking most of the time in pro wrestling these days. Okada had disrespected the young Kiyomiya last year, and a lot of people I see call Kiyomiya the young Okada, or like he's trying to be Okada. Last year, Okada was stiff with Kiyomiya, basically saying that he doesn't feel like Kiyomiya is on the same level as him, that he's being called the young Okada, and it doesn't seem like Okada likes that, and so he was taking it out on Kiyomiya with stiff shots last year. And this year, Kiyomiya returned the favor. And then to start this match, it seemed like he was trying to get Okada's attention and try and... He's clearly a character, Kiyomiya, desperate for Okada's attention, but probably his respect, and Okada just wasn't giving it to him. He was practically ignoring him during this match, and that led to the kick to the face. which really lit a fire under Okada, and we kind of see Okada snap and attack Kiyomiya, and it's definitely a side of Okada that I am enjoying seeing, because I don't know if I've ever seen Okada quite this pissed off and this intense, as they really battled at ringside with stiff shots to each other during this brawl to once again put it over as this hot angle to make you believe it's real. We just don't get this in pro wrestling anymore, and it's something I do respect about Japan. Like I said, I don't really enjoy the strong style. Some aspects of it don't make it look real, like you're taking real shots, but it doesn't look good because MMA is a thing. But I think stuff like this, the stiff shots work when it looks like both wrestlers are really pissed off at each other. Another reason that this is so hot, though, and so good of an angle in New Japan, and I guess Pro Wrestling NOAH as well, is because Okada is usually able to keep his cool, is usually to be able to be this amazing wrestler, the top guy in New Japan, the ace, as they call it in New Japan. I think Okada being this pissed off and this full of fire is what makes it awesome. And it is Okada being a part of this angle, why it is working and why it is catching fire, because we just don't see this from him since he's been the ace of New Japan. So all in all, this was a great angle, and I told a great story where Okada is just not giving Kiyomiya the attention that he wants, basically disregarding wanting to fight him, kind of. And even after this brawl and after all of this stiff shots, Kiyomiya says he wants a match one-on-one with Okada, and Okada basically says he doesn't want it. He's trying to deny wanting it, which continues to play into the story that Okada doesn't even think Kiyomiya is worth his time. But also brings an element that we don't see in New Japan a lot, and that is a wrestler not wanting to have the match that it is. This also plays into history a bit, which I unfortunately don't know a lot of, but Kevin Kelly did a good job of trying to explain it, that this happened as a shoot back in the 80s when Akira Maeda was suspended for actually shooting on a wrestler whose name I don't want to try and pronounce and butcher, and was dismissed from New Japan, and basically kind of helped reignite a different company in Japan. And they're kind of playing into this, like, Kiyomiya should be getting in real trouble over that, and maybe even Okada too. So I like this play into history as well with this storyline. It's really hitting all angles, and it looked great. The camera work for it was great. So yeah, this kind of really ignited, made me even more interested in a New Japan NOAH war. I think you should try and check it out if you can. You could probably find it on Twitter or buy New Japan World. I think it's on pay-per-view though. You have to actually buy the pay-per-view. But a great angle out of this event that was a joint event between New Japan and NOAH. It really is the hottest angle in pro wrestling in 2023 so far. Obviously, the Bloodline is giving great storytelling in WWE, but it's still hot. It's definitely hot, but I would say that this is a new angle. It's the best thing I've seen in wrestling in 2023 so far as angles go.